Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the CAB Policy and Budget Subcommittee meeting. Today is June 21st. So we'll go ahead and get started. Go over a few meeting norms. For those in the room, we will always get public comment from the committee first, and then raise hands. No one else in the room from the community. And then for those on Zoom, you can raise your hand and we'll take comments that way, but we'll just jump right into it. So we'll start off with welcome, introduction, announcement. My name is Nicole Green. I am the chair for policy and budget, and I cover East County. And then
Justin Van Zerber, vice chair, West County.
Jeffrey Robinson, committee member, representation.
Thank you. And for staff,
Patrice Guillory, Office of Reentry and Justice.
thank you. We'll go ahead and move to Zoom for staff.
Kimberly Aseo, Office of Reentry and Justice.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move for our guest, Jenna.
Janet Evans, Office of Education.
Thank you very much. So we'll go ahead and open up for any announcements from committee members. Any announcements from staff?
The only thing I'd like to share is that and I know it's part of your conversation today in the agenda packet, but the request to approve the recommendations that will move forward are on the Board of Supervisors agenda consent calendar for Tuesday. So assuming all goes well, it will be approved and move forward. But assuming that it gets pulled for discussion, that will be something that gets scheduled.
And we will dive into, thank you for covering that. I like our names thing. We will go into more of a deep conversation on that later on in the agenda and then give you both updates. Any announcements on Zoom? Okay, for the next one. Agenda item number 2, public comment on any items under the jurisdiction of the Community Advisory Board and not on the agenda. Seeing none, we're going to move right along. Next one for our approval of the minutes from the April 19th Policy and Budget Subcommittee meeting. If you can pull up attachment 1, which is on page 4, starts on page 4. I'll be looking for a motion and then a second. So just give us a moment to kind of review.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
And Justin made a motion to approve.
Jeffrey, a second.
And we have Jeffrey for a second. Kimmy, can you do a vote?
Yes. Nicole,
Aye.
Justin, and Jeff.
Aye.
Perfect. It passes.
All right, thank you. So we'll go ahead and move on to our next item, which is agenda item number 4, the update from the PPC meeting on Monday, June 3rd of 2024. And I also just want to recap, also tie into that, the CCP meeting. We did our presentation at. So if we're not all aware, what came out of that is I'm sorry, I need to pull up here. Please go to attachment number 2, page, starts at page 7. Thank you. So this is the agenda of what was submitted at the PPC meeting. So just to kind of quickly recap, if you go to, if you keep scrolling to page, I think it's 11. So this gives a breakdown of what we move forward with so far, which is the priority 1 housing, priority 2 behavioral health, the department CBO budget modification requests that were asked for, the departmental CBO training and project support. And then the add-on that was the district attorney major crime investigation task force. So this was submitted. This is what was approved from the CCP, priority 3 or 4. We had to do more research. We'll talk about that in a moment. So this was moved ahead and move over to PPC. And as Patrice said, the Board of Suits meeting is going to be held on Tuesday, where this item will be listed on the agenda unless there's any questions. Okay, so a question to what you just said. If they do have questions for it, you just mentioned that it will be at a later time, so will they not discuss the questions at that meeting and it be held over?
If it's more like clarifying question, well, the process is typically that in the beginning of the meeting, they're asked if there's any items they'd like to pull from the consent calendar that's in need of further discussion. At that point, they can pull it, and if time allows, they may be able to have that discussion during that meeting, or it gets scheduled as a discussion item for later for supervisors.
And if it doesn't get pulled and everything moves forward, what is that next process?
If it gets rescheduled.
Well, no, if everything is approved on Tuesday.
Oh, then from there, we'll probably get notification from CAO's office to start the planning process for any of these, allocated funded amounts. In our case for ORJ, because we are slated to support our community programs and increasing their budgets, our fiscal team just likely reach out to those providers to say, hey, we receive board approval, we'll start the process of amending your contract so you have resources to start the program there. For the others, for example, H3, where it is largely a RFP process, I'm sure they will probably need to do so if they haven't already. Have some internal conversations about the planning around that. So, each department where they're receiving some sort of funded amount and they're requested to do an RFP, would likely have to start doing something.
And then around priority one, the ads from CAB is that we definitely want to be part of that planning conversation. So if everything moves forward and they do approve this, how can we ensure that?
Yeah, so definitely ORJ can make a outreach to H3 on you guys' behalf to state, especially after it gets approved on Tuesday.
Right.
That CAB would like to be a part of the RFP development and review process. If at all possible, is the best way to coordinate those efforts, and then I can report back to you guys on this.
Any questions from any of the members?
We're talking further about this.
Yeah, if you have any questions about what was presented.
I mean, I think it was this letter shared with the larger CAB.
Which letter?
Um,
The staff report?
yeah,
Yeah, so you did forward the PPC agenda to the full tab prior to the PPC meeting, which included the staff report attached.
I'm just curious if anyone flagged the $330,000 for the task force office, the rental costs that the PPC included or CCP included in it. Just for discussion, so we made these recommendations and then the CCP added $330,000.
At the CCP.
Yeah. So I was just curious if any members had any discussion around that, or if we are in support of that or different.
There hasn't been any full discussion at the actual CAB meeting about it, since it was already pushed through at the CCP meeting. There was an opportunity in front of CAB to actually have that discussion. And it was decided on that particular day. So we have not had an actual discussion about that.
And then it'll be too late.
Pretty much, and that's one of the reasons probably why it wasn't, because since it was already approved from the CCP level.
So I do have a question, based on what Justice said. So does that number take away from anything that we have recommended?
It'll reduce the amount that we'll be able to deliver.
So it does, that's the answer. It does take away from something.
I would say potentially, though, I think the direction was made clear that CAB was to look at the 15 million coming from that. I know in the past, not this last PPC meeting, but one prior where this discussion was happening, it appeared that Supervisor Joya was somewhat open to the fact that more than 15 million can be utilized. Jackie? Okay,
Okay,
yeah, go ahead.
you keep going.
Okay, but, so that's what I would recommend to CAB is to continue planning as you would normally with 15 million. At the PPC meeting, there was, from the supervisors, there was definitely a lot more interest in wanting to see the remaining priority areas be really fleshed out. And then at the CCP meeting, there was definitely calls from different members that they felt the funding allotted, especially for like employment, was not enough. They felt it would probably require more. So I think those things should be well taken into account and not necessarily think, oh, well, then we have to plan with 300,000 less. For more or less plan for what you think is sufficient funding to have these specific priority areas and pilots really get off the ground.
When you say employment, what are we talking about?
Your priority area 2 or 3, whatever it was, 3, excuse me, the county employment sort of pathway. It was originally identified as about 1.5 million, and many of the CCP members felt that that was actually too low. Yeah.
That one and the women.
I thought that were contradicted. They thought that was too low, then they turned around and pretty much took the 330 out of monies that could have been used in that area. Without coming to the CAB and saying, presenting that program, this is what it is, this is what we desire. It seems like they don't. I don't know, am I wrong?
I feel the same way.
Since we were tasked with like making these recommendations, seems like they would have came to us with that. Prior to just saying that they're meeting, this is what we want.
And I think another piece that I may have missed and misunderstood was around kind of the content that they wanted us to present. I thought we were making kind of broader constructs or ideas on how we envision or think that the county could use the funding and not very specific, detailed plans.
Right.
And I wish we had the opportunity to know that in advance, because I think we had the resources during that time to kind of collaborate and create that. But here we are. I think I'm lost a little bit in like, is CAB responsible for defining specifically how this money is going to be spent? Because that's what I'm hearing now for these 2 priorities, is that they want a more detailed approach to how these funds should be utilized. Is that correct?
My takeaway from it is they want more of a breakdown of the process. So my mind was exactly where yours were in reference to what we were really asking for, was just make recommendations. We didn't go really into detail on what that was going to look like in the step 2 process, which I also wish I would know. So in my mind, we're like in step 2. So now they're asking for these 2 particular priorities to now bring back additional information. For example, the GI. Now to go into that next step of outlining the population, what would it take to actually implement that process? The part that we thought we would look into next, they're asking for now. Same thing with the employment part, to identify who would actually spearhead that, what department would spearhead that. They really want some more depth and try to figure out, because they feel like there should be additional funds tied to that. As well as from what I heard from CCP, there were previous other programs or attempts to create a pilot like we made as well, so we can look at that data as well. And see if additional funding can be added to that. So what we're being asked for is, what I assume it would be next step is to now set that process in place. That's how I see it. And to now work and partner with other departments to kind of outline what the actual ask will look like the pilot and the GI.
So I have a question. So does that mean bringing these people back before us and having them present to us like more detail about what they plan to do?
So it's more of a collaboration of, so for like GI, and I'm probably the acronym, EHSD, I mean, EHSD, right? Yeah, so it's more of like collaborating, working with them. For example, they've already done a GI pilot. So, versus it's them bringing us.
No, they haven't done it yet, they're studying.
Oh, they're studying. So working with them in collaboration with the campus, on the data they collected and being part of that conversation of what GI is. So it's not.
EHSD is doing a presentation to the board late summer, early fall on GI overall, because there's also Measure Excellence for the GI candidate program. And so rather than have two separate processes of GI, they want to hear the whole.
So,
And we'll be part of that presentation.
so second question, with keeping in mind is the purposes of this is that they know more money should be allocated to them or,
To which specific.
so like GI, for example.
No, I don't think, so there were CCP, in terms of the employment piece, felt that it probably required more money because there are different folks in the room who had experience with developing a similar sort of process. And so because of that, they felt 1.5 was just not going to be enough to do what it is that you're likely aiming to have accomplished. And just so you all know, I did reach out to San Francisco County as well as Santa Clara County, and they have similar, had a similar project and was able to send some information over. So I can, we can include that as part of your plan to look through to see how their work was structured. I did speak with Chief about her experience in Alameda County. So I'm gonna find a contact to reach out to there to see if we can get some program info of how their the campaign, specific campaign. Something, I got the name wrong, but anyway, we'll
So the peer support specialist.
no, it's, so essentially, I think what happened in Alameda County, which just sounds like also took place in Santa Clara, is that they hired a management consultant who worked with the Human Resources Department to scan all departments of entry-level positions that would be probably the most amenable for doing provisional hiring of folks with justice backgrounds. And so they scanned all the departments, but then they also invited departments to participate in sort of like this work group planning around it. It sounded very intensive, I'll say that. The development of that, the planning around it, and then separately, right, was then the funding of a employment or a training provider, a vocational training provider, who would then set the participants up for success in those provisional positions. Some of those particular county positions, some of the wages for that was partially funded through their AB 109 allocation. So there was a mixing of resources as well as a lot of coordination and planning to really get this thing going. So like I said, I'll try to get more info to see how that all was developed, but that, I think based on that knowledge and experience is what they're saying, this thing could really be much, it's going to be more robust, and so it's going to require a lot more resources.
So the gentleman that was sitting next to the chief, sure. RCAO.
Was it Tim Yule?
think so.
Okay.
He had mentioned that there were, for the point, like employment pilot scheme that we were recommending, that there previously was a similar pilot that was run a few years ago. That was to be structured within the jail.
I vaguely remember that part, yeah.
Because he was excited about what we were uplifting. So I made a note of that, to ask and kind of find out information about what was the intent a long time ago. Because that was one of the reasons as well why they, and our he indicated it would probably cost more, but they did make this. Okay, something like that. South Clara County did come to an April line Sunday, and they did have some great, pilots. So I am interested in seeing what they give you. But that was one takeaway, one note. I didn't write down what he said, but I made a note that he mentioned, I don't know how long it was, but he said there was an attempt to try something like that a while ago, some type of, pilot.
I can reach out,
I just made a note, what? What, I don't know.
Okay. I'll reach out and see if there's any other.
So the 330,000, the DA, District Attorney, Bureau Investigative Task Force. So that's something that the CCP recommended, right?
Right.
So is this gonna basically be resubmitted, this complete document somewhere? And is it gonna be submitted as if CAB is also recommending that?
So it's already on consent calendar for the board of supervisors, the piece that's in front of you. So it's pretty much slated to be approved. I mean, again, unless any of the supervisors change it.
So I guess what I'm really saying is it approved as if CAB recommended?
It's approved as
This is
there were.
CCP. Okay.
Well,
Because this is
because
only
it
right.
has recommendations to CCP. CCP did its consideration, so they made its recommendations to PPC. And then PPC referred to board for approval. So,
And it's documented, right? They can't answer, we made our recommendations to CC.
well, yeah, so your
It's even in the
recommendations.
letter.
Right, it's
Okay.
yeah.
That was my only concern because I don't see how we recommend it, so.
You just want to make sure for the record, it wasn't
Yeah,
something that
yeah,
CAB
yeah.
considered. Yeah, I understand.
This was their recommendation,
Right.
since we were tasked with making recommendations about these funds. Then they attached that to it. It wasn't as if we said, hey, this
Right.
is something that we.
It was very well written stuff. That really worked out. In very specific direction that you can see. On how it came about, the CCP process. And there wasn't a whole lot of wiggle room to amend it. Since it was the CCP recommendation. So that's why. They wanted to protect that from me, or to you guys turn back.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of public comments. Yes. It was recommended already. CCP.
Sorry to interrupt, but it's a little hard to hear on Zoom. If you guys could speak up, please. Thank you.
But there was, I can definitely tell you, I joined both meetings and although I was involved in one, we had to work with my also spoke up, about our recommendations, so there was a lot of conversation around this kind of things.
I know you don't know word for word how to close the communities.
Well, it wasn't too much in reference to, that was said out loud at the meeting about this being added, but they did uplift like a recommendation for it and the need for it and the need for it. There were individuals there to talk about the GI aspect of it. And then I talked about the employment in the other areas. There was a lot of support. There was a lot of conversation even before that meeting, so I knew. And,
I'm sorry, are you concerned about the department recommendations going forward? Is that in that it wasn't from CAB that
I was just trying to get a complete understanding of how it came about.
Right,
Is it attached to like, this is a cap recommendation?
yeah, no.
And
Yeah.
that was my only concern.
So it was made very clear that these were one-time funds and that they would expect data outcomes. And that they would not be automatically pulled into future budget asks as the, you know, how they do the baseline, that it was made very clear in the staff report, that these would not be pulled into the baseline, that these were one time. So,
Maybe just being a dead horse, it doesn't need to be said, but like. How does funding a district attorney's major crime investigative task force support 8109 population?
Well, I think their argument is that, AB 8109 funds, are, permitted for a purpose such as this. And I'm just looking back over the staff report now too, that there was a sense of urgency to cover the facility costs for this task force. So in essence, there are AB 109 allocation that, yes, in theory, are to be utilized to support the AB 109 population in terms of reentry related resources. But then there's also the aspect of what realignment brought about to local criminal justice systems, which meant that some adjustments of operations. And so I think that they're probably looking at it within that sort of scope.
Yeah, I think just personally, I think it's a hard pill to swallow, and it's frustrating that we're given an opportunity to present ideas around the 2 million and then money gets backdoored into something like this. And I don't know if it's worth, like, this is a huge success. We're
Right.
getting $10 million out the door for priorities that we heard were valuable to the individuals we're raising voices up for. And so I think I'm personally like conflicted on, should we even be supporting this? Because the county is trying to do this backdoor approach to get funding into something that they need to fund. Or do we just play nice and say, this is great, and we're getting $1 million out, and we have the opportunity to research these other two priorities?
My honest response, I've already had a pilot. We paid nine. Because we've already been able to move forward. And that I'm so sorry, and that, and, I had the same feeling that you did when I seen this. I like my emotions as well. And I had to look at the big picture, that we made to allocate these funds to really help the population in certain areas. I also love the fact that we could have a priority for pretty public conversation. And at the PPC level, we understood that. And that, so I had to kind of weigh. I mean, I felt the same way about the department class. We have to allocate here, right? Even though we may have felt like we didn't want to, where we have this 50 million, how can we still ensure that our recommendations move forward and still, as I said. So I understand how you feel. That was my takeaway, and it's already moved forward.
And that's why my concern is that it's done. I get that part, that it's done. I just didn't want it presented as if CAP represented, that CAP proposed this and represented it, because we did.
Right.
Exactly.
As I said.
That was my only concern, was that it wasn't presented as if this is something that CAP presented, something that CAP wanted, because we were tasked with doing something specific, we did something specific, then something was added to that. I didn't want it to be presented as if we added that to it. That was my only concern. I get that it's done. I get that.
that question was asked by the speaker, because when the agenda came up, I saw it was called. So,
Yeah.
that was clear.
Any other discussion?
I don't think this one is on. Are we using that microphone?
Can you hear me?
Is that one's
Can
not mine, but-
Yeah, I can hear you guys, but sometimes the volume seems to get a little low.
I'm sure.
No, that's.
Oh, that's.
Whole party. And try not to like, go like,
It's all right.
When she saying volume, it won't be your whole.
I do that a lot, and I'll just whisper for some unknown reason.
Cause it used to end up.
Hey, Kimmy, can you hear us? Can you hear me from right here?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Not trying to cause more noise.
No, I hear you. Just make sure it's right.
That's a good sound.
Yeah. What about now? Is this even better?
Yeah, that's way better.
All right, good call out. So before we move on, I just wanted to make sure that I made my notes, right on what the next expectations are for policy and budget. Outside of, I did make the notes that for the employment part that you already, that RJ following up on a few things with some information back. Do we know when we'll hear from, EHSD for the GI part?
So I also reached out to EHSD to kind of get a sense of timing of when they would be preparing to present to the board of supervisors. I haven't heard back yet.
Okay.
So as far as where they're at. But as soon as I do, I'll be sure to let you guys.
I thought it was gonna be September and then somebody told me August.
So what does that part look like in reference to the?
To this population, yeah, I'm not certain yet, but I'm
Okay.
hoping I can get at least on a call with their research and evaluation manager, who I know is their main point of contact on that work.
Okay, and then CCP also mentioned, in reference to the women's program, that the ask that we had initially indicated was too low. And I know that the Virginia project had, some other information that they didn't have a chance to present, so, I know and here they had indicated up to 750, so can we go ahead and have the Virginia project come back and present that information? to us?
I think it'd be a good idea to have them come back as well as possibly Center Force, as another consideration, though they currently have a subcontract with Health Rights and Gender Responsive. They may, as an organization, have had a history of doing other gender responsive work and projects with similar population, so it'd be good to hear that with their previous budgets, have we reflect around that.
And we'll be looking for,
Total program cost, but she has funds from other states.
Per year.
375.
Yeah, I remember because in our discussion, we reduced it.
but I would still like to present like everybody else did, full information so that we can have our packets of information.
I think she did, didn't she?
She did a
She did it all.
presentation, of their program, but we never
Not
asked,
the budget.
not the budget, so we
Got it.
never really asked her
Okay,
for
great.
additional. Since
I'm
I'm
trying to
trying to
get-
take into consideration, and we should be looking at what. She has a great program. And it would be nice to also hear from, more information from Center. So I know we'll be looking at our schedule later, so I'll leave or. We don't have any of those.
No, we just have the meeting schedule, your current meeting schedule,
Okay.
and then we can kind of talk through, we'll get to that part of that in some of these.
Okay,
What is our timeline to bring this back to CCP? You have it?
well, I was going to reconfirm with them with the notes, because we have to come back. I made a note that we're supposed to come back September, October to discuss that full cab. And then October 7th meeting to present the findings. Well, I think it's,
Yeah, so, we do have a date for CCP meeting, it's going to be September 20th. And at that meeting is where CAB's fleshed out recommendations will need to be heard. And then following that, CCP will refer it to move forward to be added to the PPC agenda for October 7th, 4th or 7th. But anyway, the first Monday of the month. So PPC wanted an update by their meeting in October.
October 7th, right?
Seventh, the 20th, September 20th. 10:30.
The only presenters we check that 7th course, and then it depends on the responses to office relations, just from EHSD. I'm sorry, from EHSD on how we are going to collaborate with them regarding the GI aspect of it. Information that she may get from our counties.
Are we able to ask CCP for a little more direction on what they anticipate receiving, or what would make them, what information would help them make a decision to move these funds forward?
I think a good outline, especially for GI, if they can give us that, because I know they want demographics. They want us to identify who within the justice involved are we going to serve, and how are we going to do that, and what is it going to look like. So I know that much from GI. But from the employment piece and the women's program piece, what information do they want us to get? I didn't ask that.
To be honest, I'm not sure. I'll be really frank. Because on one level, you all aren't like program designers, so I don't anticipate you shaping a full program. However, I do think there is room to add some level of specificity, that can be where you can package your asks. So for example, what you just came from with them was in 4 bucket areas. You know, just essentially a statement of what you felt was the need and how that could be addressed and allocated about, right? I think it can be fleshed out a little bit more to say what ideally for women's services, given what you see is happening or not happening, what would you like to see be provided? Is it case management of in custody of women who are in custody, and then upon release are receiving housing up to 6 months? And you know what I mean? Just I'm throwing stuff out there, but all to say that what are some of the particulars within that respective pilot program you'd like to see be incorporated and funded?
So with the women's program, that one, I understood. So from the employment standpoint, one of the questions for who's going to serve it, like what department is going to be responsible for it? How would we have them? From our, there's some things that they're asking us to do, which is fine, but how are we?
So I think we can definitely reach out again to HR, as well as you know, you can follow up with Tim Buell from the CAO's office, especially if he's mentioning that something like this was done previously. I think I shared with you already that Chief mentioned that what she saw in Alameda County is that this was project managed by a consultant who then would work directly with HR and the different departments to then build this off the ground over a course of time. And so who then would be the holder of that could very well be county administration and or HR specifically. So with the 1.5 million that you currently have allocated, I could see that amount, matter of fact, came from what we anticipated would be the employment related costs for the training and the wages, the subsidized wages for the participant, right? The CBO related costs.
Right.
What we're not accounting for, which is what I think they're lifting up, is the actual coordination, the time and planning that's necessary to coordinate among departments, to identify those respective positions that then the CBO provider would help onboard those, individuals into, right? So that's a piece that can be, again, you're not going to give all of the minute details around that, but at the very least to say, oh, there's a need for a management, a project manager to identify these things, support coordination between these various agencies or whatever, and you can frankly say, you don't know which agencies, that it should be an open invitation to the departments who are willing to take this on, right, and willing to support folks within the reentry population into their respective departments. You can identify those who we know already do some hiring of folks with lived experience. We know H3 does it. We now know probation does it. There's probably other units within the health services department, right? Sure, public works that without even thinking, without even really looking into it. This is something where we can also maybe solicit some feedback and support from the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice, right? Because I'm sure they're looking at equitable outcomes in terms of our county's workforce. I'm sure that's something that they'll be looking into in the future. So there's, I think, opportunities for more feedback and input from you guys on this. And where you might want to see increasing resources. Now, with GI specifically, forgive me if I'm going all over the place. With GI specifically, keep in mind, the original request was $1 million, and that was broken down pretty clearly, right, what that proposed item would be. And then kind of in the end, you guys like tap, added on, like, throw another $1 million at it. So you might want to consider that if, this is just a suggestion, I'm not saying, please don't beat me up for it, but you might want to consider whether or not throwing another $1 million at GI is, if that additional 1 million would better serve for something like the bigger employment project, right? And then that way, at least the 1 million you do have allocated for GI can maybe be a match or coupled with whatever DHSD is doing around Measure X. So those are kind of the details, if you will, of feedback that you all can offer. That doesn't necessarily require you to get into the nuts and bolts of program design. So does that offer a little bit more clarity in terms of direction?
I would just add to that, there's no guarantee that there is going to be a GI project. The Board of Supervisors wants more information. There isn't enough information on outcomes, and the concern of one supervisor is making the program people follow along. Well, another supervisor raised concern about would his funds be better spent across the board to help more people with services, or so there's a lot of still unknown about GI. So it's a bigger discussion that is going to come to the Board of Supervisors, not we're going to plan a pilot project, but whether or not they should do a pilot project. So just to keep that in mind. So I guess my point being, that's a bigger policy discussion at the board level. There are other things in these priorities that are filling gaps in services right now. I guess I'm just going to put too much energy into GI at this point in time until the board gets better direction on what we're going to do. Because it takes the board members to decide whether or not we should have a project just going to happen.
Can I ask a follow-up question? So if we, as a subcommittee, still believe that guaranteed income projects are a valuable resource and have been raised up as an approach that this committee wants to support, what would our pathway be to seeing that be successful all the way through approval of the board of supervisors. So like, if it was included in this recommendation, would it automatically be declined because the board is still quote unquote deciding?
Well, I mean, that, I think the timing is all lining up, and that was part of it, because there's going to be a discussion at the board. And because there's already funds sort of earmarked for GI for Measure X. So that,
So
and
we
then
could
when
still
you all
earmark
did
funds.
this, you can still earmark, I'm just saying, I wouldn't dive too deep into what that program might look like at this point in time, because
That's helpful.
it may or may not,
Right.
you know, at the will of the board.
But would it just still help for us, kind of like what you just outlined, just throw it out there regardless if it's not on, if we have an idea of maybe what part of the seventeen month population that we're.
And that's fine, especially if it correlates with what population that, let's say, EHSD is looking at. So if they're like, yeah, current CalWORKs recipient.
I guess my point being, I would hate to see the other areas. Is that almost like if you could separate that out, and say there's a.
Yeah,
Yes,
and I think
yeah.
you can certainly package it the way, you know, that part is about how you want to present the stuff, right?
Okay.
So I think you can work through how to package the recommendations. Because each of the, I mean, in just the pre and post release alone, it's like 4 different things in one thing. So, you can, in whatever narrative or however way you want to present it, you can present forward what you want to say or what have you around the different pilots and identify which priority area they represent, you know, like,
So I have a question. So if it's kind of not necessarily recommended that these other areas get more resources, is how much? What are we talking about? Because we're pretty much talking about taking from one and giving to another. How much should we be taking? Is that the question? I kind of hear clearly it's been said that this thing isn't like, the timing isn't right for it right now, which is okay. For me, as far as GI. So how much should these other programs, should we be concerning ourselves with recommending the support? Is there an amount? What are we talking about? That's my question.
For the employment of the women's program?
Yeah,
I think you can start with what you already allocated out as your, like your, at least, at the very least, your baseline.
right.
And so as your baseline, you heard back from CCP that, oh, that's not enough.
We want the number
Right.
12. I get it.
Now, with GI specifically, that's probably the one where you can play with the dollars a little bit, because what was originally presented to you was 1 million. You guys added on an additional million. And then right, that the desire is for CAB to coordinate with EHSD because they're planning around already earmarked funds for that. So you might consider, well, if there's going to be sufficient, sounds like a lot of money could very well be put aside for GI pilot should that move forward. How do we want to plan with what we have allocated for GI?
So
You
there's.
might decide you want to reduce it and add 1 million to the employment one, or you might want to reduce it down to 700, whatever you want to do. But that I would say that one specifically, you may want to reconsider how much you allocated to that, knowing that there's some other funds on the side and the wings to cover a GI pilot.
So in a nutshell, from you, the extra 1 million, I gave to.
That's what I was asking.
So stick to our original.
Oh, well,
That's
yeah.
really what I was asking.
Yeah, so stick.
So you want to know if you should
I
or
didn't
not?
know if anybody wanted to say it.
I didn't know.
But that was my real question.
Yeah.
Added $1 million.
We can take it back.
Yes,
Yes.
you can absolutely.
Because it kind of sounds like,
Yeah, and it's like monopoly.
sounds like that's what we're asking.
But I would say maybe the best approach, the fairest approach probably, is that you already made allocations that have been heard, right? And you can see those as your baseline. And then decide from there that from that baseline, do you want to reduce and or increase? So you have a baseline for women's services, right? And if you felt as though after hearing from the different agencies, oh, what we have as our baseline is not enough, we should increase. We can go through the same sort of budgeting process as we did before. So if we find ourselves to be over 15 million, should you decide, or whatever's left, should you decide, well, that overage is necessary. We need to present to them because they asked us, right? To give more clarity around the funding allocations along with more specificity with these respective pilots. So we're going to give them our ask. You know, that's one way to look at it. But what you have already presented, I think, just see that as your initial benchmark, and then work with those amounts supporting them.
So although we're waiting for EHS to get back to us in the meantime for GI, because our window is kind of short, and even though we don't know how it's going to get, we'll still be able to present something. Can we ask for, I believe we will come on, we asked one of that in our meeting, right? The GI pilot, our program.
I think so. They have a GI part. There's a couple of groups. I mean, there were so many public comment letters from current GI projects,
Right.
some of which they're not.
Right, they're
Some of them
really-
are not GI, that's
Yeah,
the
so I
thing.
so I wanted to kind of stick to the
They're
ones that I know.
programs that have stipends
Yes.
attached to them.
Okay.
But they're not GI.
So.
And
so
I don't
that's
know,
That's a whole.
again, I don't know if the Rubicon is, I hear them say is GI, but then it could be exactly what Jill just said, it's a stipend. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I can make my own opinion on what part of, the population I think would be great for that, but I would love to be able to hear from someone that,
That's why EHS is
Yeah.
gonna go back and forward. Because we've seen a lot, we've heard a lot, right?
but their population is focused around, look at the research on 1,000 hours.
No, I was saying as an example, they're looking at the
tasked
public.
To go look at all the GI programs out there and to come back
Oh.
with a report on what they found.
So my hesitation with them was because I thought it was only focused on one area.
No.
And so I didn't think they were looking at the
No.
whole.
They're the safety net services for the county, so that's the department that would best be suited to do this research.
Like when we do with housing, we're saying H3 is better suited to do, so that's why EHSD was selected.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm just being honest.
They're not
I thought it was only,
creating a
one
pilot.
area, and that was my concern.
Yeah, they're not coming up with a pilot, what they're doing is coming back with a report on what's out there, because that's, the outcomes is some part that we don't seem to be able to wrap our
Okay,
arms around of a true GI.
okay. So we may not, as a committee, have that information until they're ready to present it to the board again.
Yeah, and the email said in July, beginning of August. I'll let them pick out, but, you do have the advocacy groups who are recommending GI, right?
Right, okay.
But that's sort of part of it separate. I mean, they're not coming to the board necessarily with a GI project. Their research.
In my brain, I'm trying to figure out that it's happening.
Yeah, no, I feel like there's a lot of more learning that
Right.
needs to take place, and just simply saying learning that needs to take place does not necessarily mean that nothing will ever happen, right? But it's just to better understand the nuances between the guaranteed income or basic income versus incentives for program participants or what have you. And if one approach is best suited for what has already been stood up and is currently provided to various vulnerable populations who really benefit or something like that. So, yeah.
That's what First Five did with their funding instead of creating a GI. In the pilot program, they're doing an incentive program for those who are going into their own childhood education field.
Right.
They're giving them stipends to help them do the training, live through the training. So they pivoted. And they're doing it in the results style program.
Which a lot of our able programs have that.
Yeah, so just throwing it out there. Cause in reality, we know it's the title, it's GI. So if it was,
But it's not. Guaranteed income has no strings attached. You give people money and they do with it what they want. Any program with an incentive is not a GI.
right,
If you're required to be in a program to receive those funds, it's an incentive program, it's not a guaranteed income. So, I mean, it's semantics, but it's,
You know, it's important, nuances because I go as far as to say it's not, it's important nuances because.
Right.
there's- I know there's a lot of conversation around having an evaluation component to it, so to follow, if it's gonna be a true guaranteed income program or pilot, they're to follow those individuals over a course of time when those, direct cash payments are made to assess or evaluate the success of the program and the outcomes for those individuals.
so could we say something where we give our feedback as a committee based on what was submitted on what we feel about the GI, uplifted. However, if for some reason there's a vote that this needs to be research to be done, we as a committee recommend a certain amount of dollars for maybe to be utilized as a stipend. Something like that. I just want to ensure that there's something there to help individuals.
I think you should make the determination after you hear what EHSD has presented.
so you could put a pause on it.
Okay.
Earmark it, highlight it, identify it, but say this is pending
Okay.
the report to the
That would,
board of
that
supervisors.
would be the same thing. If you made it stipend, then
Yeah.
that wouldn't be guaranteed.
No, so I'm just saying
No, no,
that
no.
that's the direction that those funds went, in,
Right.
that we currently have in the county. They didn't do, they decided to incentivize people to go into this or to get their certification, because we need more preschool teachers.
No, I was just throwing it out there because I know a lot of our CBOs have stipends right now. So I was saying if this conversation about GI needs to continue for some reason and based on the research that come back, it doesn't move forward, right? What do we use for those funds? Do we want to be able to, I was throwing out this option, to be able to say, hey, we want to take this amount of money and increase stipends somewhere. So that's why I thought that can be checked. But, okay, so, so I guess in reference to next steps again, just to make sure, because we have to get this done by October, so.
Is there a reason why we have to do that?
Yeah, their supervisor Glover and Julia made pretty clear to PPC, they did not. Well, I'll say this, there was no timeline presented to them in terms of the next steps with priority areas 3 and 4. And then they really urged, they felt that there was a sense of urgency to not let this drop. And so they wanted to hear something. But at first it was September, kind of urged it.
Thank you for
October, because it is a volunteer board, there's a lot of planning that has to take place in this. The groups meet, or your body meets once a month, so we at least asked for it to be pushed back to October 1st. And then there was another who also said that they really appreciated the sense of urgency, and they also want to see this come back sooner than later.
And there's always concern with saved monies. That's not that. So that's why they really want to be allocated.
So can we, I'm sorry. Can we see if, Cynthia and Silvers can come in? And we'll be able to at least get that.
This is for July.
And then for the employment piece, I really liked that we gave, in clarity in reference to the direction. I would love to be able to identify, a lot of maybe the organizations that we know of that hire individuals that just impacted and maybe we can reach out to our current CBOs and see if they're able to also apply, if they have.
For, August, this is for,
Yeah, and then that will give us time to come back and so September we come put everything together.
so actually your September meeting, it would need to be rescheduled since the CCP meeting has been scheduled on the same date.
Okay.
And so we'll probably need to possibly schedule something early September.
Yeah,
Before the full cab meeting, share the stuff out with the full cab, right? The full cab meeting on September. Second Thursday, of September. It's on the 12th, so you'll also ideally meet, on the 6th. We're gonna keep it on the Friday. And
so I can do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, if Friday don't work for anyone, just let me know. Most of the end of Thursday, September, the first week of September.
So, and that is the week after.
What days are holiday?
Monday is a holiday, Monday's Labor Day, so that week, that's what she was.
Thank you. Very much.
Cool. You have to be involved in that. For a conference, for Tuesday, Thursday.
We can do like we did before, like, the share drive. I think they can actually virtual, how we, I would prefer how we work the last time, where we have the presentation. And we got the share drive to kind of write everything up, so that when it comes to September, it's us. Because the winter was too tight, and September is really us recapping everything we sent, at our presentation. And then I think we can still do that.
That's fun. And then I think the other issue is the July meeting.
And so I do have it on here, just to have you guys see what other days of the week are available. Probably move our meetings from Friday. I'm gonna have to make some adjustments, but I did want to have that conversation with you all to find out what other days we're going to meet. But that's there on the agenda, so that is an option that we can look at in your center. Okay. So we are going to talk about dates.
I'm sorry, before we move on to dates, so we're saying for July, we want Center Force and Gemma project to come back to talk about the human services. For August, essentially have a conversation around the employment piece and review some of the materials from the previous, employment projects from other counties.
Right. And then September will be used for, as to kind of come back together to start putting up a presentation. Summarizing, everything.
And,
And I think Justice, you said the July date would be good.
Yeah, I'm gonna be out of the country for a couple weeks, 16th through the beginning of August. I'm also unfortunately out of town this month, and that's the 10th through the 14th.
That's July.
Um,
So you're going to 10th and then come back.
August.
Oh,
I mean, you could post out in, where are you going? What country?
Well, the first leg, I'll just be on the northern coast, and then I'm going down to Colombia for.
Well, if you want, we can put together an agenda where you can post in Colombia, so should anybody want to join your meeting? I'm being funny.
You're gonna invite them? You legally allowed to do that?
you are.
Yes.
I mean, we can continue to just have it and have the information so that we don't.
And I just won't participate.
Yeah, just be that you're fine with that.
That's okay.
We could, I mean,
I mean, I'll read it.
I would say you'll read it, so I mean, and when the agenda is posted, if you look at it, and if there's anything that you want us to ask, just send it to,
But you-
Ariana.
So by the Brown Act,
Yeah,
you could give your address to Gariana, and it can be listed on the agenda. And all you have to do is just post it on the front door, maybe 6 hours ahead of the meeting date, and invite anybody in who wants to come and enjoy the meeting. I mean, that is an option. My boss doesn't.
Yeah.
And she cares for her elderly father. So she does that. She has agendas.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah. So she just posts the address, and so it's like around that, so you don't get into all of the extra stuff. So you were, anytime you stay at a hotel, you can do.
Now, but we still would need formally.
No,
Oh,
so for that,
okay. Okay. Oh, because both locations are posted, that's right.
yes, that would, if the new rules don't apply, this is the old rules.
so I can do that for the cab meetings too.
Now he's trying to get creative. You see that? Justin, he's never gonna be here. He's gonna be.
So the African American
People are gonna be
holistic
coming out of my
wellness,
house left and right.
African American holistic wellness resource hub feasibility study group has, I think, 3 or 4 different locations around that they meet together. And so they just post all of those on the agenda, and the meeting is several rooms around the county, plus the.
So then that doesn't count into like my missed absences.
It's
or
totally
whatever.
different, it's the actual compliance with the original county.
Yeah, yeah.
We're gonna be chatting.
Okay.
But if he did wanna just submit something,
I think it's gonna be easier for me to not participate while I'm there.
Right.
So I will review in advance. I can share any questions with you. You can put them up while the meeting's happening.
see, not too bad.
Awesome.
I'm hoping for.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Me and Jeffrey got it.
So now there was a question about changing, the July meeting date?
No, we're gonna keep it.
Okay.
And just have Justin submit the questions that he had.
Okay.
Cause I'm just looking, it won't be anywhere.
So just so I'm clear, Justin, so you will be missing July, will you be here for the August and September? Well, September will likely be moved up to maybe this 6 potentially. I'm sorry.
I do need to move the August one.
My August is way more flexible.
For some reason I have to take PTO while I'm working. I was like, take.
Yeah, we have the August meeting is on August 16th currently. If you were to push it up or back, if you push it back, we're running into the 81 summer. That's all that same day. If you go up on the 9th,
Cause my plan would be.
with that.
My goal is to be on the 8th and be back, like.
Now, I don't know if Fridays are best for you guys, but we could also, I'm just looking at Friday dates in that one. But if you feel like you prefer another,
And that's what I was gonna ask the committee what other days they work on. Or in. Based on your schedule.
I mean, I can make most days work. It's just the specific time, I gotta block it out. Are there days that work better for you, Jeff?
Very flexible. I have a lot of flexibility. As long as I have notice.
Do you wanna just circle back and share dates with Patrice?
For August?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I'll also share, based on my schedule, dates that are possibly working. Friday, I'm thinking maybe like a Tuesday.
You like moving forward?
Yeah.
So
Tuesdays are tough.
Tuesday is gonna be-
So what's good days? Well, you tell us good days.
Well,
I
I
was-
board of supervisors meet often,
Ah,
staff have to be available.
And I do know, and then sometimes we have OCEC is.
That is right, that's Tuesday. And then we have programs and service on Thursday.
Yeah, so we could, Wednesday would probably
Okay.
be the best option.
I was gonna say that, I'll be here.
Or a Monday,
You know, Wednesday.
either a Monday or Wednesday.
Share dates.
Okay, I'll share dates. I'll go back and review right now. But I'll make a note if I'm.
And the other thing to note too is that, should the next few months do need more meeting time, we can schedule special meetings. I know it's a headache, especially during summertime. But we can certainly try to make that happen. For those meetings, we don't need to post it in the world. So,
Will be good. I think with those two meetings and us working online, we can get by.
yeah,
We should.
you guys are pretty efficient with this stuff, so, yeah.
So I'll get that to you by Tuesday.
But it's good to have.
Yeah.
Okay, so this, the time. Anything else we can discuss around this? I will, get back to Patrice by Tuesday with possible dates. And if anything, we can talk about it each month and I, move around as we need to. Is that, if I had to leave as a Friday and then if I had to adjust, I could.
So you mean like,
If I just leave it set on here as a Friday and as each month comes, we need to move around. Or is that too difficult for?
yeah, it'd be best if we could have a set
Okay.
recurring schedule.
Okay.
So that way, because then we'll put it all on the agenda for the next meeting time and all of that. So if you,
Okay.
I would say, like, you feel that for the foreseeable future, for the rest of the year, the meeting, you prefer the meeting date and time, or day change in
Right.
time, then yes.
Okay, I already have an idea of what day I'm intending to, so I'll get all over to you. Okay, so moving along to our work plan, I asked for this to be put in there so we can kind of see where we are. I was kind of excited after a little peek at it before the meeting, and we kind of moved back really far. That was all the work that was done, and we haven't actually looked at it for this year, since the beginning. So that is on page 12. Can you pull that up for me, please? Okay, thank you. So let's go ahead and look through this. Just want to kind of see where we are. So our goal number one, continue advocating for and tracking progress for equity in the criminal justice system in Contra Costa County. So for reference to our key action step number one, and this is an ongoing item, I will definitely say after our review that we have been working on this. And I feel like we are current as of dates and we're continuing to work on this. And this is the work that we're doing right now. Any feedback on that?
Our work plan from last year, right?
Correct.
Yeah, you guys kind once you got into this year, you went straight into the
Yeah,
planning around the priorities.
so we will need to update, change the policy and budget work plan for change that for 2024. And as we review this, if you see if there's anything that we may want to take off or adjust, it's time, and that's why I wanted to bring it back, because we kind of started the year with full flag and continuing the April and access funds, that project, so we have not even had a chance to look at that, so I figured, let's take a look at it, adjust what we need to. Some of these things are continuing to this year. I'll just give us a moment to kind of look through it and then we can have a conversation that way. The one thing that I know that we haven't touched bases on, we had left off in 2023 was the, we put it as all, but, I don't believe any of us have joined it, the Racial Justice Oversight Body meeting.
Their updates.
You have yours?
I have their updates, like it comes via email, but.
Right, I have that.
Yeah, I can say at least for that specific body, it's going through a lot of changes right now. And the body's struggling to have meetings because they also have a lot of quorum issues. The other piece too is that the ORJ currently staffs it. We're slowly but surely will be transitioning those administrative roles to the Office of Equity and Social Justice. So we stay in contact with them about timeline when that will likely happen. We'll see probably this fall that will take place. They're also planning for a joint meeting with the Equity Committee, which is Supervisor Never and Joya, sometime in September. So once that is, essentially scheduled, that probably might be a meeting that would be of interest to CAB members. I've also shared with the co-directors that CAB would love to, hear from them, and so we'll likely schedule a presentation from them to CAB at a full CAB, their future full CAB meeting.
Okay, so, can you scroll up for me, please? Always at the top. So if we can keep on at the, want to see the header. So where it says policy and budget work plan, if we can change that to 2024. The second key action step where it says identify gaps in Cocoa County. We're over to the right where it says, change the name to mine. I joined the programs and services meeting. Where it says responsible.
Oh, it had Lenita. Oh, this is PDF. I'm
Oh, I'm
making
sorry.
edits. I'm making
Okay, you making edits. I'm sorry, Kimmy.
So, Nicole.
Yeah, and then for the next one, where it says work today, can we just put pending since we're pending the confirmation on the,
For which,
for the, racial, yeah. No, for the racial oversight body, RTOB.
Oh, sorry, CAB.
With the meeting to resume April 27, 2023, if we just take that out.
Okay.
Any other feedback from the committees in reference to forward, any changes or adjustments? Good. Goal number 2, develop. And we have to change that fiscal year. So, have policy and budget recommendations. And that timeline is coming up. So in the midst of working on those other items, we still do have to look through our recommendations to that together. And that's going to tie into when we get the results back from the programs and service committee. So that's the same. So here in the third one, we put on there proposed increasing funding for mental health services and propose more equitable access for the regional population. Do you want to leave that? Well,
I think we can take out the last two. Because we did this. stuff.
right, correct. So we pretty much completed those.
Hey, look at there. You got her.
Uh-huh.
Stop off. Making accomplished.
Yeah, I think we can just remove the last two boxes or
We've just done
columns.
it, those are completed.
And there's check back, actually check.
Yeah, just check records with the show we've done something. All right, anything else that we may want to add, adjust? You're none? Okay. Go ahead.
Can I work, not to put more work on you guys, but. Well, no, it's a continuation of what you said you wanted to do, so it's not suggesting. But, we can. You tell me something. But, you might wanna say, or and some of this could probably be refined, but, do any of you want to be a part of, any of the RFP developments of the,
You already know, like,
yeah, or the priority areas that, the CAB priority,
That is- that is-
and also, any review panels or things like that, so.
I guess we should add that into that, because that's what we're doing anyway.
So you could
Yeah,
do,
for,
and you know, obviously it'll just be like updates you're sharing, it's nothing to have something needed to do, but something you keep track of.
yes. That was a good idea.
See, it's something you said you wanted, yeah, I'm just making sure.
She's still you, we just slowly going like this, yes. All right. Any other feedback on that before we move forward? Nope. Okay. Anyone on Zoom? Sorry, I didn't ask anyone. Nope.
Yeah, all public comment has been avoided.
All right. So moving on to agenda item number 6. So I did just ask for our recommendations to be put in here. A while. And again, that is part of our work plan. We'll wait to kind of hear back from programming services, their survey results. But I do want us to have a chance to be able to look over these and kind of see where we are, what we've done, what we've achieved. Kind of like last year, what we have to do as a committee is, you know, based on the survey results, we give the program service kind of working hand in hand. If there's additional recommendations that want to be added or if there's adjustments to what's in here. Last year, what we did is we reviewed them. There were things that were already completed and we kind of suggested that. And so I wanted to just uplift it again and I'll give y'all homework. Kind of look it over. You know, but again, we're pretty much waiting to see what these survey results kind of bring up, if there's anything, but I do want to take a look at them. I mean, there's so many things that we've achieved already so far this year. And maybe there's some more person that we want to do or add-ons that we want to insert to the recommendations. Like for example, last year we made some adjustments to our 4 key priority areas that we worked on the access funds. We came back to our recommendations and made some adjustments in there for that. So with the continued work that we're doing right now with the other 2 areas, as well as these still priorities, there may be some more adjustments that we want to make. So there's your homework. Any feedback, questions, ideas that you two may have?
Lots.
Lots? Uh-huh.
None of it needs to be sorted out today, but,
Okay.
I think going back to my other question about budget recommendations and modification for CCP, like, is there something that body? Let's go back one second. Did these recommendations influence CCP's budget decisions? If so, are we able to identify that or see that? And then secondly, is there something this body can do to further support CCP's work or budget requests? Like, is this helpful, or is there another approach that we could take that would make our voices more?
My read on things is that, I think what you guys presented, if I can recall correctly, oh gosh, it's 2 years ago, when this was first brought forward to, around the excess funds, to, from CAO to CCP. It was 2 areas, 2 priority areas of the 4 that was recommended. And CCP, I remember CCP saying, no, let's cover all 4. And so that leads me to believe that what you all are doing, you're presenting the ideas that either may have been percolated, or some of them may not have, if they haven't really had a centralized focus on it, and you are bringing that spotlight to it. So in essence, your voice is already amplified because you're bringing to their attention what needs to be focused on now, especially if there's resources in buildings. Now, what is probably going to be trickier going forward is any updates you want to make on this, such as like a follow-up, or where's the status of things, or, okay, we've placed dollars into these respective pilots, but now how do we do some system enhancements? Like, for example, when RJ presented the provider survey results at the end, we had a series of recommendations, many of which aren't, I mean, they're gonna require some resources, but not, it's more internal than anything else, all really important. But it doesn't have the flashiness of like having dollars attached to it, it's bucket of funding that's available. So I think those are gonna be more nuanced conversations. I think that would be welcome, but again, it's not a centralized focus of the CCP. It becomes that once CAB says, actually, we want to see in terms of now 2.0 or next step or whatever, after we've seen all of this, here's some other things that we want to see the various departments take into consideration and deliver these resources.
One of the things I definitely tell that proper ethics campaign, alongside was submitting this document, we did an additional document where we highlighted those areas that we wanted to focus on. So we submitted all of our recommendations, but we typed up, I'm gonna put that what we call it, an additional column, because we never read off this. We worked together with the chair, me and other board members.
The talking points?
Thank you.
Yes.
And we submitted that, where we wanted to pull those certain areas, we wanted to highlight the.
Yeah. Especially during your ambassador.
Yes.
That's where you definitely have that one-on-one time with them to bring a unified message, but individual meetings to say, you know, this is where our priority focus is at now. We hope that you would join us, or what's your feedback on this, or what do you think? And in that way, once they do come together as a full meeting, you've touched them all, and have a bigger public discussion on things. So I think you all have already kind of built the framework for how you should approach and ensure that your priorities and recommendations are, there's a concerted focus on that. I think the next step, which like I said, is going to be trickier, is how you do the follow-up. What's the next phase of this work? And some of it just needs to happen, right? And just take place. So you kind of have some downtime, if you will,
Right.
to do some deliberation, to do some thinking about what's the next phase of work for CAP specifically. You did literally just got through a major like achievement, big time. Yeah. So it might be worth it for the CAP to take a step back and do some recalibration.
No,
And it is a.
I think it's the truth. I think it's time for us to sit back and kind of look at everything that's been implemented now and let it kind of go forth and.
And you might want to decide whether or not, for example, doing annual provider surveys, and
Right.
essentially telling you the same thing year after year, and then, there's been a lot of conversation around identifying gaps, but then you just presented recommendations that are to fill those gaps, so you're gonna keep doing gap analysis, you know what I mean, like,
Right.
there's going to, now it's a matter of what's feasible, what's practical, given what has happened, what's next for CAP to focus on.
I don't think Cavities, I'm sorry, but I don't think we stopped and looked at all the work.
No, you guys kinda
We
keep
haven't.
going.
We just been,
You guys keep.
and I think that's a good recommendation. No one stopped to really, since I've been on CAP, we haven't looked at all the work. It's just been go, go, go.
Yeah.
And, I think it is time to really take a step. I won't say step back, but just really identify all the work that has been done, what is our next step? Because we fought really hard to identify gaps, push things forward, and we've done that. So what we want to do now?
Very facilitator, that applies to that.
That would be amazing.
That would be very helpful if you do have, some fun.
That would be a really great exercise. Spending that $3,000, that's.
I'm gonna figure out where we're gonna find some more money.
If we make it a local nonprofit,
Well, all that kind of stuff is where I'm proud of.
re-entry buckets. Gonna layer it out.
Yeah. You are.
You had it, our work, but so.
It's your work. It's your work, it's your work.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, any other conversation or feedback for agenda item number 6? So agenda item number 7 is to review the Able access fund recommendations. I just wanted to put this back in here. We pretty much had a full discussion earlier about it. I wanted to ensure that it was just in here for us to see again, but we talked about it. I want the PowerPoint right now and to have it within our, just in case there was some more discussion. But if you all agree, I don't feel like this needs to go through that section. If you all do, you can definitely take a pause at number 7 and go through the pages 20 to 30.
Okay.
Any feedback in the room? No? No Zoom? No hands? Yeah. Okay, agenda item number 8, discuss CAP policy and budget meeting budgets. And that is on attachment number 3, starting on page 31, if you pull that up.
So I think we talked about that.
Yeah.
And what I have down is that you'll be getting to myself and, Gariana, meeting dates, recommended changes to the meeting dates. But at least for July, we'll continue as it is, right?
Yes. So I'll probably go most likely.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So moving on to agenda item number 9, next steps. Are going to be you, Kimmy, or Patrice?
If you want, Kimmy, I could just quickly highlight what I do have here. We'll be, reaching out for July, August, for the July and August meeting to Center Force General Project, where they'll present on women's services. For the August meeting, we'll have some materials ready to go to look at other county similar employment pilot, county employment pilot projects. For the September meeting, which we likely schedule that one. But that will be the date where you all have to pull things together. What else am I missing? I'll receive feedback from the whole dates, changes to certain dates.
And when you're back from the.
Oh, yeah, and, yes, so any outreach that I did do no, I've not done outreach to each three, but I have done outreach to EHSD. So as soon as I hear back from them, hopefully we'll have an update by the next meeting in terms of where you're at, if that study process and happening. And when that meeting will be scheduled, when they will be presenting to the board of supervisors.
And then add the outreach for H3.
And I will outreach to each three. Okay, that's it. Then I know.
All right. So if that is it, we are going to adjourn to our next policy and budget subcommittee meeting on July 19th from 11 to 12:30.
Thank you, guys. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.